You've probably heard of King Xerxes from the movie 300, the powerful Persian ruler who led a massive invasion of Greece. History often remembers him for the legendary Battle of Thermopylae and his grand ambitions. But behind the veil of imperial power lies a much darker, more personal story, one that involves betrayal, jealousy, and unspeakable cruelty within his own family. Today, we're going to uncover the horrifying truth about what King Xerxes did and how his actions were arguably a fate worse than death for those closest to him. To understand this story, we need to dive into the heart of the Persian court, a place of immense wealth and absolute power, but also a snake pit of political intrigue and personal rivalries. Xerxes, like many kings of his time, had a principal wife, Queen Amastris, and a harem of concubines. This setup was designed to produce heirs and forge alliances, but it often bred jealousy and conflict, and it was within this volatile environment that a forbidden love affair would ignite a chain of events so brutal. It's been whispered about by historians for centuries. The trouble began when Xerxes fell deeply in love with his brother Masisi's wife. This wasn't just a fleeting crush. Xerxes was relentless in his pursuit. However, she repeatedly rejected his advances, staying loyal to her husband. Frustrated but not defeated, Xerxes came up with a cunning and twisted plan. He arranged for his own son, Crown Prince Darius, to marry Artent, the daughter of Masistes, and the woman he desired. Xerxes believed that by bringing her daughter into the royal family, he could use this connection to finally win over the mother. It was a strategic move, but one that would backfire in the most tragic way imaginable. Once Artent became his daughter-in-law, living within the palace walls, Xerxes' attention shifted. He quickly forgot about his original obsession and instead became infatuated with Artent herself. Unlike her mother, Artent did not resist the king's advances. Soon, the two were entangled in a secret and dangerous affair. This wasn't just a moral failing. In the rigid hierarchy of the Persian court, it was an act of profound betrayal against his brother, his son, and his entire family. One day, to show his affection, Xerxes made a rash promise to her. He told her she could have anything she wanted. Anything at all. It was the kind of grand, kingly gesture that often leads to disaster in these stories. Artent, perhaps naive to the danger or maybe deliberately provocative, made a fateful request. She asked for a magnificent, intricately woven robe that Queen Amastris had personally made for Xerxes. This wasn't just any piece of clothing. It was a symbol of the queen's love, status, and connection to the king. For Xerxes to give it away was a blatant and public insult to his wife. He knew this and tried to dissuade Artent, offering her armies, cities, and mountains of gold instead. But she was stubborn and insisted on the robe. Fearing the consequences of breaking a royal oath, Xerxes reluctantly gave it to her. Artent, proud of her new prize, wore it openly, flaunting her power and her special relationship with the king. Of course, it wasn't long before Queen Amastris saw Artent wearing the robe. She immediately knew what it meant. She understood the depth of the betrayal, but Amastris was a shrewd and patient player in the game of court politics. She didn't lash out at Artent directly, nor did she confront Xerxes in a fit of rage. She knew that would be a foolish and likely fatal move. Instead, she waited. She bided her time, plotting a revenge so horrific it would make a clear and terrifying statement to anyone who dared to cross her. Her moment came during the royal feast, a special annual celebration where the king was obligated to grant any request made of him. On that day, Amastras approached Xerxes and made her demand. She didn't ask for Arten's death. That would have been too simple, too clear. Instead, she asked for Arten's mother, the very woman Xerxes had originally desired. A mistress, in her cold fury, had correctly deduced that this woman was the root cause of the whole affair, believing she had manipulated her daughter to ensnare the king. Xerxes was horrified. He knew the woman was innocent in this particular matter. He was trapped between his oath to his queen and his duty to protect his brother's wife. He begged Amastras to reconsider, but she was immovable. Bound by tradition, Xerxes had no choice but to hand over his sister-in-law to the queen. What happened next is truly the stuff of nightmares. According to the historian Herodotus, Amastras exacted a terrible vengeance. She had the woman's nose, ears, lips, and tongue cut off. Then, in a final act of unimaginable cruelty, her breasts were cut off and thrown to the dogs. Miraculously, the woman survived this torture and was sent back home, a mutilated, living testament to the queen's wrath. When her husband, Macystes, saw what had been done to his wife, he was overcome with rage. He knew Xerxes was ultimately responsible. He fled the court, intending to start a rebellion in his home province of Bactria. But Xerxes' spies were everywhere. The king dispatched his forces to intercept Macystes before he could raise an army. Macystes, along with his sons and supporters, were all caught and executed. In the end, Xerxes' affair didn't just lead to heartbreak. It led to the brutal mutilation of an innocent woman, the complete annihilation of his brother's family, and the seeds of instability sown within his empire. And what of the daughters in this story? Artent, the young woman at the center of the storm, essentially disappears from the historical record. We don't know if she was punished, exiled, or simply forgotten, but her life was irrevocably shattered. But there's another daughter whose story is often overlooked. Xerxes' own daughter, Amytis. Some historical accounts suggest that after this bloody episode, to pacify his enraged queen and restore some semblance of order, Xerxes may have offered up his own daughter, not for death, but for something just as horrifying in that context. He arranged for her to marry a man named Meg. This might sound normal, but the marriage was a political tool, a way to mend alliances broken by his scandal. Amytis was now a pawn in her father's desperate game of cleanup. Her life and future were dictated not by her own desires, but by the need to cover up her father's transgressions. And her story gets even darker. Later, Amytis herself was accused of adultery in a court where her father's actions had set such a violent precedent, and her mother had displayed such capacity for cruelty. Imagine the terror she must have lived with. Being the daughter of a king like Xerxes was not a fairy tale. It was a gilded cage where personal freedom was non-existent. Their marriages were political transactions. Their lives were bargaining chips. And if they stepped out of line, or even if they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, the consequences could be devastating. For Artent, whose actions triggered the catastrophe, and for Amytis, who was used to clean up the mess, their father's lust and lack of self-control condemned them to lives overshadowed by fear, manipulation, and trauma. While not a physical death, this was a death of the self, a destruction of their autonomy and spirit, engineered by the one person who should have protected them. This, in many ways, was a fate worse than death. Thank you for watching. The story of Xerxes' court is a powerful reminder that history is filled with personal tragedies that are often more shocking than the famous battles and political maneuvers. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. We'll see you in the next video.